Hello there, my name is Rachel Musson. I am former teacher and now Director of Education at Thoughtbox. And I'm here today to talk to you about the emotions of climate change, in particular focusing on eco-anxiety. Now, this may be a phrase that you've already heard of. It may be something you're experiencing yourself or that you notice in some of the young people that you work with. But whether we like it or not, eco-anxiety is on the rise across the world. Why? Because the climate crisis is a crisis of human emotion. Now, Global Action Plan commissioned a study in 2020, and in this they discovered that 1 in 3 young people, according to their teachers, were already exhibiting high levels of climate anxiety. And over 77% of the young people asked said that they felt anxious when thinking about or talking about climate change. Understandably so. This is quite an existential crisis that we're living through. And so, as inconvenient as they may be, the emotional responses that we're all having are incredibly important when we're thinking about teaching or talking about climate change, in particular in school. Our emotions will change on the roller coaster that we will face moving into the crisis, and we will all be feeling different things at different times. Some of us may feel anger at the lack of government action or apathy as we see it. Some of us may feel fearful at the ever-increasing headlines that seem to show the climate crisis growing in extremity. Some of us may feel overwhelmed or anxiety at the nations and the people and the communities already being severely hit by the climate crisis. And many may have family, friends, or loved ones living at the front line of the climate crisis. So part of our work as teachers is recognizing that we will all be feeling very different things at different times, and we're all coming into the space from very different contexts. And most importantly, we are not immune. We may be adult, we may be teachers, but we're not immune from the emotional roller coaster of the climate crisis. And so the work starts with facing up to our own emotions. And I'm going to just talk to you about 3 things that we can do starting from today to support our own emotional health in the space and to really help the young people that we're working with move from a space of overwhelm and anxiety to one of empowerment and activation. One of the core things to recommend is that the science and the information about why the climate is changing and what is happening around the world important to allow young people to understand the what and the why. But coupled with that is the feelings. And they may be inconvenient, as I mentioned, but ignoring them is actually to the detriment of all of us. So when we're talking about the climate crisis in particular, eco-anxiety is an important area to focus on. Now, young climate activist Clover Hogan, who talks a lot about eco-anxiety in her own work, recently shared her TED talk in which she said this: "Young people have not created this reality. We have inherited it. Yet we're told that we are the last generation with a chance to save the fate of humanity." Now, is it any wonder we have a mental health epidemic and pandemic sweeping across the world in light of the huge responsibility that young people feel is on their shoulders, coupled with the fact that so many young people don't know where to go to for guidance or support and have no safe spaces to be talking about their own thoughts and feelings in this area? Now, eco-anxiety is a term that has been coined in many different ways, but the American Psychological Association have defined it as a heightened mental, physical, and or emotional distress in response to changes in the climate. Now, as I said, you may already be exhibiting this yourself or recognize this in the young people that you're working with. But eco-anxiety doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing. And as Caroline Hickman from the Climate Psychology Alliance will say, and I will concur, eco-anxiety is actually a healthy response to the climate crisis. We're feeling anxious because we care. We care deeply about the health and well-being of the rest of the natural world and the planet that we live on. And so these emotions of high-level distress are actually very healthy in response to what we can see happening around us. Now, Caroline, in her work at the Climate Psychology Alliance, supports this change or this shift from looking at anxiety to a space of empathy. So reframing eco-anxiety as eco-empathy. We feel because we care. And when we think about the word empathy, it's an outward-facing emotion, and we can channel that emotion to be doing something rather than turning inward and feeling blocked or stuck or apathetic or at a loss of what to do. So let's look at what we can do. Firstly, let's be brave. As teachers, we are not the climate experts. Our role is not to stand up in that classroom and teach the answer to climate change. If we knew that, we would be in a very different place right now. So be kind to yourself and recognize that you're not the expert. Your role is to welcome the questions and the emotions and just allow young people to have a space to talk and to be sharing and learning about the climate crisis. Recognize that we're in this together. We're in the same storm, but in very different boats. Now, the climate crisis is a social justice crisis, and those being particularly badly affected already are often in marginalized areas of our communities already facing many different issues of social justice. So extend our empathy to recognize that many people are facing different complexities of the climate crisis at different times. So step back a little bit, look at the bigger picture before responding to the need to be talking about the emotions, because they are there. Let's be safe. Let's create a space to talk about climate change, but create a safe space. Now, when we think about the neurobiology of well-being, we need to recognize that we are not able to separate our thoughts and our feelings. The neurons in our minds interconnect the two. And so we need to think about the core human needs that we all have, whether in the classroom or at home or wherever we are. We need to feel safe, to feel heard, to make sense of the world around us and to be understood. And so we can support young people by creating these safe spaces in the classroom for this to happen. Now, in the work that Kit Ratley is doing in regards to safeguarding, they talk a lot about how climate change is a safeguarding issue, and teachers have a responsibility to be safeguarding the futures of our young people. And so let's think about the importance of supporting the mental health and resilience of young people to face up to a complex future by strengthening the core skills that they need to thrive. So let's create the safe spaces to explore these ideas together. And if you're unsure how to do that, ThoughtBox and many other organisations have resources that we can share with you to support. And finally, let's meet connected. Let's move from a space of anxiety to an action by recognising that the climate crisis is a series of interconnected problems. Now, I often hear the idea that the climate crisis is too big or too complex for us to do anything about as an individual. But each of the individual issues affecting the climate are something we can respond to because they each have solutions. So whether that's focusing on plastic pollution or our food choices or our diet or our clothing choices or our travel, we can all make small changes which are impacting the whole. Now, I hear a lot of people saying the system is too broken, we cannot do anything. But we are the system. Think about a traffic jam. All of us at some point will have sat in a traffic jam and probably cursed the rest of the cars on the road for getting in the way and causing such a jam. But we are the traffic jam. If we were not in that car sitting in that place, the traffic jam wouldn't exist. And it's the same thing with the climate crisis. We are all part of a system, and by changing ourselves, we're changing the system. So focusing on one part impacts the whole and really helps young people to see that they can move from this space of overwhelm, anxiety, channel that emotion into empathy and into action and create wider ripples of change. Now, I'm going to finish with a Margaret Mead quote, which can never be overestimated. She says, "Never underestimate the power of a small group of committed people to change the world. In fact, it is the only thing that ever has." So I invite you in this space to be brave, to be safe and to be connected, and recognise that the emotions are a significant part of the climate crisis and how we teach or talk about it in schools. Now, organisations like ThoughtBox and many of the others involved in this inset are here to support you with lots of resources and guidance and training. So do get in touch if we can help. And the very best of luck on your journey ahead in the teaching and the talking about climate change. Thank you.